Your life is about to change. I'll explain why. Everything that you currently take for granted may not be there tomorrow. How can I say this? Well, I'm about to show you why. If you look at what's going on economically, there are some circumstances. Financially, we've got issues. But there are other elements, part of this puzzle, that I'm going to show you today that starts to become a very big concern for the vast majority of people simply because they're unprepared. They don't have this part sorted out. And I'm going to show you what that's all about today. I think it's important that we see the entire picture so that we can be awakened to it and then take the right steps of action so that we can actually mitigate some of the potential dangers that, quite frankly, most people will be suffering as a result of. How does that sound? We want to get into that? Let's begin right here. Look at it. Americans are now cutting back on food purchases. That's the worst sign. If they were cutting back on iPhone purchases, if they were cutting back on some sort of fancy thing, well, that's one aspect. But once you're cutting back on food, that pretty much is it. It's over. And what type of food, what type of circumstance are we talking about here? Well, I have noted before that the food stamp usage, you got over 40 million people on food stamps. You've got the food bank usage at near or all-time record highs. You can look at it. People are desperate. They are going to any means necessary to get what they need, the basics, right? Food. And so, that tells us something. It tells us that, and by the way, the dumpster diving that we talked about in a previous video, it shows us that people are going to extreme lengths for the most basic thing. We know housing costs are absolutely out of control. We hope for some level of deflation in there so that we can go in and we can buy it up. But that's not happening right now in many cases. We want that. We want that to occur. But because there's so much inflation in terms of the amount of money that they're pumping into the system, it is just unstoppable in most areas. There are other fundamentals as part of that. So we got our economic aspects. We got our financial aspects. I want to break down more of that here to show you. Remember, one piece at a time. Bank of Canada's record tightening campaign exposes lenders' mortgage risks. And that's part of this as well, when you can see that's going to put a squeeze on people. When you increase interest rates, it squeezes people. That goes for the credit cards. That goes for the mortgages. That goes for any type of loan. A lot of people, they took on way too much debt when debt was so cheap, but didn't realize that at some point it was going to increase, and then that would burden them at that moment. It's not as if it's something that, for a period, well, it's going to be okay as long as I just keep this. And no, it's going to change at some point. When it does, it disrupts your life. And many people, they just got blindsided by it. Why? Because their real estate agent, their mortgage broker, their, contractor, like everybody in the whole field have never seen any slowdown even in so many cases. Australia, Canada, other places, even in 2007, 2008, the prices never came down. They simply continued to go on. 2020, they never came down. They continued up. These are real abnormalities, and so that disrupts people's way of thinking. So we've got this extreme circumstance of way too much inflation. Prices are out of control. We can't keep up. Okay, we're on the same page so far. Chipotle tests robot that can prepare avocados to make guacamole faster. If there's anything that I need, it's to get guacamoles faster into my body. Okay, avocados faster into my body. What I'm saying here is what they're doing, because Chipotle's got Chippy the robot. And that's a real thing, by the way. You also have this one, which is part of that. I forget the name of it exactly. They say it in here. And I just thought it was really funny to see what's going on. Avocado. AUTOCADO. That's interesting, right? They're making this, and they're doing it for a reason. Because they can invest $20,000, $30,000 to get a machine that's going to replace jobs. And guess what? It's not going to have a lot of the downsides. It does have some downsides, but guess what? There's not going to be any surprises in your food. That food's going to be available to you 24/7. Now you don't have to worry about hours of operation because Potentially at some point in the future, they're going to be able to operate them 24/7. They don't even need the lights on in these places. They could operate at a lower, power usage. So they could say, hey, this is for green, eco-friendly and all that stuff, where the machines could work in the dark. It's not an issue. And so slowly but surely, humans are being weeded out. Oh, a human, then we need to pay health insurance. Oh my goodness, a human, their hair falls off, it goes inside the dish. Oh, this is not a good thing. What about all the potential lawsuits from humans? Oh, now we got to turn on the heat, or in the cold months, we got to turn the air conditioning on. At that point, oh my goodness, no, humans, we don't want any of those. We want a robot that's going to work 24/7 in the dark with no heat on, no AC on. They're going to do whatever they are asked and just go about their business. That's what these companies are doing. You might say, no, the robots are not going to work. It's not going to happen. Well, guess what? They're doing it anyway. They're doing it anyway. And you see what I'm saying here? I'm tying this in for a reason. They are going to use the eco-friendly, climate-related aspects in order to implement certain things. Remember that this is really important. ESG had become the biggest thing. Now it was caught to be a fraud in many sense. But this is something that is starting to go on and starting to be forced upon us, where you go on your credit card, you use your credit card. Oh, that, whatever it is, that's microphone, that's going to cost you 35 pounds of emissions. Okay, sure. And they're just measuring it now. But at a certain point, you will get an allotment. And I want to talk more about that in a second. Very important. That really is what this is all about. Meme stocks are back, raising red flag for the broader market. All the garbage is doing well right now. The everything rally is back. So is the casino crowd. Not since 2020 has a week seen larger cross-asset rallies going on all over the place. Everyone's loving the Fed again because they're going to cut interest rates. So tomorrow, that's the expectation, right? That's what they're saying right here. Signs of a cooling job market have started to appear. And the chart at the bottom just showing us the job openings, the amount of people quitting is down. Everything is just showing us that there is some cooling effect that's taking place, which is very bullish for the stock market because the Federal Reserve may not have to increase interest rates. They're hoping, by the way, that they don't have to increase interest rates at the next meeting, which is coming up. But they're saying, hopefully, fingers crossed, they don't have to. That would be very bullish for stocks as well, even though they promise that they're going to keep interest rates elevated at least into next year. So markets getting ahead of themselves. This was interesting. If you haven't seen this, Shopify fuels meeting purge by shaming employees with a cost calculator. If you haven't seen, it's pretty interesting. So you book a meeting with like 10 people and it shows you the estimation of what those people are per hour, gives you a total cost of what that meeting is going to be so that they can get rid of useless meetings. What I'm suggesting by this is that these companies, through various means, are starting to constrict, they're starting to tighten their spend. And that goes from just not hiring new people, they're firing some people, they're using methods like this to try and save money any way they can. The next level of that is, of course, robots, automation, AI. All of that is coming into place right now. And yes, I have heard from so many people telling me that actually it's going to create even more jobs. I would have to say the rate at which we are going into AI automation, it's happening so fast. ChatGPT didn't even basically exist last year. And now everybody's talking about it. Every ad on Instagram is about, ChatGPT and all this nonsense. But, and I say nonsense because it's, it's supposed to be, everything and everything, but really it's just one piece of a, big puzzle. The point I'm trying to suggest to you is, quite frankly, that these corporations are going towards a very different world. We're living in a very different world. We are shifting, which brings me into this. The final point I need to make, which is Macron, on this, when they had their climate summit, Macron opens the climate summit in Paris and calls for a finance shock. Interesting. Global leaders gather in Paris to seek financial solutions to tackling poverty, curbing planet heating emissions, and protecting nature. Now, finance shock, you can take that in two ways. The one way, which is probably what he was suggesting, was that this means they need to boost the amount of money that is going into these, climate change efforts. Billions and billions per country, ultimately trillions of dollars over a period of years. But I believe the finance shock would be the shock to you, the individual, where they take away some of the things you are used to and they implement what they decide is necessary. And what we are going into this world is a tightening of the belts of not just the corporations, but of the governments for basic essentials, for your infrastructure. And instead, right now, the number one thing that they seem to be spending on is the debt. The financing of the actual debt is becoming so expensive, it's exceeding the budgets for everything else. That's one. So that's just money just gone. It's just burned. Your tax dollar is getting burned. At the same time, they're using your tax money for a lot of useless things. Okay, so that's one part. But they are implementing these new climate agendas, which I believe are going to be brought in with a lot of different aspects. So you're going to see that, like I said, on your credit card, they're going to be giving you a certain number. This is associated with that, 35 carbon pounds, all that. Your ability to drive is going to be based on that. Your ability to fly is going to be based on that. Where you work, how you get to work, everything you do in your own home. Oh, it's Thursday. You're not allowed to do certain things. Oh, you can only do those things on every other day because we have to worry about the climate. Now, you could argue, you agree with the climate, you don't agree with the climate. The whole point is your abilities, liberties, and freedoms are going to be restricted based on an agenda set by somebody above your government. Then that gets brought down to the government level and they implement this agenda. Whether or not it is beneficial to you, it really doesn't matter because they're going ahead with it anyway. You will be restricted from your basic norms. What do? Let's just spell it out. I talk about this all the time. It's called pillars of prosperity. One thing that you got to do is you have to increase your income if at all possible. Why do I say this? Why is that important? Because when you have more income, you have more mobility. You have geographical diversification. Hopefully you're making money from other sources. You could bring that in. Okay, very important. What I say to people is that they should be aware of how to bring in more income, because if they give you a carbon allowance every month, every week, whatever they're going to do, you can then buy additional allowance. So if you want to go for a drive, you can do that. You're not restricted by that based on your income. That's how they will separate the classes. You think it's class warfare right now, you have seen nothing. I want to tell you this right now. You think you see class warfare now, the world we're moving into is going to be 100 times greater than that because of this. This implementation will change everything. The next aspect is, quite frankly, that they're going to be moving and restricting on all levels. So that's why you need to be more self-sufficient. And that means in many different ways. Maybe you're using less energy. Maybe you have solar panels, geothermal. Maybe you have a garden. Maybe you know a farmer where you can get that direct access where you can barter, or whether you pay and then that farmer is going to give you the direct access to what you need. Maybe it might be something that's considered, too many carbon emissions for that. You eat beef or something. So, cow causes too many emissions. You can't eat it. But maybe if you have a relationship with that farmer, you could still get it. Do you understand? That's part of the self-sufficiency aspect. And so they're not going to be able to restrict everything, of course, but they can, when they implement the CBDCs, they're going to be able to turn that on and off, and they could use this whole carbon emissions as one of the methods to do that. It could be based on many, many factors, of course. The point I'm trying to make here is that you can take action towards these goals that you have. Your circumstances are going to be different for everybody. Some people are more on one side than the other, but I'm giving you the knowledge of both sides so that you can implement what you think is best. And I give you the reasons why. We learned that today. We see all the different puzzle pieces put together, and I hope that I made myself clear here. If I did, hit that like button. That's how we do this here on this channel. On the Discord, I actually give more information, okay? So you're going to go into the Discord on the left-hand side. You're going to see all this information that you can get into the pillars of prosperity. I've got it all written out there for you. Totally free. Please check it out. Discord link right in the description below. I'll see you tomorrow. Take care.